Now, as the minstrel touched the lyre, he lifted up his voice in sweet song, and he sang the love of Ares and Aphrodite, of the fair crown, how at the first they lay together in the house of Hephaestus privately. And Ares gave her many gifts, and dishonored the marriage bed of the lord Hephaestus. And anon there came to him one to report the thing, even Helios, that had seen them at their pastime. Now, when Hephaestus heard the bitter tidings, he went his way to the forge, devising evil in the deep of his heart, and set the great anvil on the stithy, and wrought fetters that none might snap or loosen, that the lovers might there unmovably remain. Now when he had forged the crafty net in his anger against Ares, he went on his way to the chamber where his marriage bed was set out, and strewed his snares all about the posts of the bed, and many too were hung aloft from the main beam, subtle as spiders' webs, so that none might see them, even of the blessed gods. So cunningly were they forged. Now, after he had done winding the snare about the bed, he made as though he would go to Lemnos, that stablished castle, and this was far the dearest of all lands in his sight. But Ares of the golden rein kept no blind watch, what time he saw Hephaestus, the famed craftsman, depart afar. So he went on his way to the house of renowned Hephaestus, eager for the love of crowned Cytherea. Now she was but newly come from her sire, the mighty Cronion, and it was chance had set her down. And Ares entered the house, and clasped her hand, and spake and hailed her. Come, my beloved, let us to bed, and make our pleasure of love, for Hephaestus is no longer among his own people. Methinks he is already gone to Lemnos, to the Sintians, men of savage speech. Okay, we get a just breakneck turn from yesterday. If you're just tuning in, I don't know why you're choosing this episode, but if you are, welcome. Happy to have you here. Today's episode has nothing to do with what we've been talking about. For those of you who do remember yesterday, in case you might be binging this show, Alcinous, after the games and challenges posed to Odysseus, called for the minstrel Demodocus to come and play his song, and this is the song he's singing, the song of Hephaestus, Ares, and Aphrodite. Do we need some context about this? I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward, but let me see if I can't give a little more depth to this. The story that the minstrel is singing about here is basically how the god Ares basically cucked Hephaestus by sleeping with Aphrodite behind his back. Aphrodite here called by two different names, Aphrodite and Cytherea. She also seems into Ares, I guess. We don't get a lot of insight into her, really. That is just par for the course for Greek mythology. Not unimportant that Hephaestus is tipped off by this extramarital affair by Helios. Helios is a sky god who is traditionally described as all-seeing because of his daily passage across the sky. He's associated with the sun. So it makes sense that he would be a witness for this, particularly because Ares and Aphrodite are engaging in some afternoon delight. If it were like a midnight tryst, then I think maybe a different god would be the informant here. There are a couple things I find interesting about what's happening in today's passage. One, we are in epic poem mode. That's what Homer is doing, the oral tradition. And yet, this passage particular feels more like what people like Apollodorus, who is a historian of sorts, we can go into some other time, like Homer, pretty much debunked that it was a single person, but essentially it's called the Library of Apollodorus. He basically was an inventory person for all the myths. Who are everyone? What are the relations to each other? And what are their stories about? If you have read Edith Hamilton, her book Mythology, which was assigned to me in high school, it's very similar. That kind of like, here's just a primer on who everyone is. That is what Apollodorus's library is like. And that feels like what Homer is pulling out today. Just like, oh, let me let me pull out something that maybe Ovid would have written. Of course, that was centuries later. I'm just giving you an example, trying to illustrate things. So the fact that Homer is inserting a sort of 101 course on another god's story is interesting. It has nothing to do really with Odysseus, except maybe the kind of thematic ties to Ares representing what is happening behind Hephaestus's back, being similar to all of the wooers back in Ithaca behind Odysseus's back pursuing Penelope. I find it also interesting, we have heard so many artifacts that have been made by Hephaestus in the story so far, and now we get to see him in action going to the forge and basically creating this invisible, unbreakable net, something that would hold even the god of war, Ares. So that, I think, just speaks to the extent of his powers. Hephaestus, Aphrodite, there's a whole world of story we can go into with them. Hephaestus being, let's just say, if all of the other gods are looked upon as flawless ideals of what a humanoid could look like, Hephaestus maybe got the short end of the stick with that one. But we love our juxtapositions here, so despite that, or because of that, he was able to marry Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, the most beautiful creature who was ever created in the universe. But to show the extent of his power, that he can bind even the other gods with his craftsmanship, is, I think illustrates just the power that he has, even though I think he's often a footnote to other people's stories, other gods' stories. He himself holds just as much power within his lane. Cool. I'm resisting the urge to go into the full myth here. I really want to, but we got to do one of these shows every single day, and I can't make them all an hour long, even though my heart wants to. But you know what? There's no end in sight. Just because the story ends in a year doesn't mean that we can't do more deep dives on all of these people after the fact. So hang in there with me. We're going to go to some great places. And speaking of great places to go, you can go over to patreon.com/gruntworkpod and start to get some awesome bonus content, because it is still supporter month. And that's all of the plug I'm going to give you for today, and end this episode and ask you to join me here tomorrow with a little bit more of Book 8. Until then, okay, goodbye. Odyssey is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. The show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Odyssey, written by Homer. Theme song by Neuroflow. You can support this show and other shows like it by going to patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.